Welcome back for episode 2 of the New Trader to Funded Trader series. This is basically a autobiography of the steps that I went through from the day that I was first introduced to the idea of day trading, forex trading, until the day that I officially became funded. In the previous video, we looked at basically the first 30 days of my journey, which was spent consuming YouTube content, free YouTube content. I did have one page that I left off that I actually spent a lot of time on. Here on the bottom, I added UK spread betting on here just to kind of round it out. And these little numbers I added are just for my own sake. I was trying to estimate the number of hours that I spent on each one of these YouTube channels in those first 30 days. But UK spread betting was another good one. They have a lot of good information on that YouTube channel. The gentleman, I made a ton of videos, hundreds of videos, so a lot to dig into. Just wanted to mention that before I got into today's content. All right, so like I mentioned, it was 30 days from when I first saw information about day trading on YouTube until the day that I finally started my first live account and also began an education course with that. Now, some of this stuff on this list I did concurrently with my first 30 days of YouTube, so I'm just going to briefly walk through these and explain each one. All right, so the first thing that I did was BabyPips. Now, first of all, let me explain. When I decided to start looking into trading those first 30 days, my whole goal, I've been around the block a time or two, so I knew there were going to be different ways of doing it, and there were going to be people who were trying to charge you to learn different ways, different techniques, different methods. I knew some would work, some wouldn't. Some were scams, some weren't. So I knew that I needed to be careful. So those first 30 days really was my opportunity to kind of stand overlooking the battlefield below and to get an idea of to what the battlefield looked like, what the lay of the land was, where I thought there were openings, where I thought there were opportunities for me. And so those first 30 days, I jumped around all over the place, and finally determined that price action, that trading without indicators was what I wanted to go for. Right? I had looked at some indicator YouTube stuff. I've as I mentioned in my previous video, and while I know that's a legitimate method of trading, that just was not what I wanted to do. I'm not really sure why, but it just didn't fit my personality. And so I knew I was going to be doing price action. So there was a few different directions you can go with price action, but at the end of the day, when I finished kind of my YouTube rabbit hole digging, I decided on smart money concepts, order block concepts, right? Open, high, low, close, liquidity, order blocks, smart money, whatever, however you want to describe it. From the outside looking in, as a beginner, for me, it just seemed like it made more sense from compared to everything else that I was looking at. So, while I was looking through all of that, making those determinations those 30 days, I started on BabyPips because everyone said the first thing you got to do is get on BabyPips. And so the BabyPips website here, babypips.com, learn forex, and BabyPips, the school of Pipsology, is a rite of passage. All right, it's 359. I'm not signed in here, but if I signed in, when I signed in on mine, it shows 360 lessons. And what this is going to do is it's going to really test how committed you are to learning forex, learning day trading, whether you're talking about forex, futures, commodities, whatever it is, stocks, whatever it is you're looking to trade. Okay, this course, this basic education course, is going to not only teach you the fundamental foundations of what it means to trade the markets, but again, like I just mentioned, it's going to test your determination, right? Do you want to trade bad enough to go through these 359 lessons? Okay. If not, then that is probably telling you something. Now, that's not to say that everybody has to go through literally all 359 sections before they can move on to the next thing, but because some of them are somewhat related, some of them are very indicator focused. You know, some of the modules are focused on things that you may know I'm not going to be trading this way, and you may kind of fast forward through them, skip through them. So I'm not saying you have to literally tick off every box, but still, you get my point. If you're coming at this with a frame of mind that I just want to get through it as quick as possible and get to making money as quick as possible, then you're going to have a lot of frustration and a lot of aggravation. Kind of like if you didn't know how to ride a bike, you just decided you're going to hop on the bike, just take off as fast as you can, and you're going to crash. So anyway, this was where I started. I started going through this while I was doing some of the other things that I'm going to talk about. So along with the BabyPips, one of the first places that I went to was this 4-part Mark Douglas series. Mark Douglas wrote a book called Trading in the Zone. It's the name of the book. This is a workshop that he did sometime, I don't know, 20 years ago, 25 years ago. But it is excellent. It's about 6 hours worth of content. I've probably watched it about, I don't know, 10 times, honestly. I mean, I watch it over and over and over again. It's very interesting about how you approach your trading in terms of it being a probabilities game. You trade in sample sizes. This video is actually one of the first ones I watched because it gave me the idea of a strategy that follows the open, high, low, and close of the previous day's trading. And so that was very interesting to me. And so, now that is a big part of how I trade on different time frames, but still that idea of open, high, low, close from previous trading days, previous sessions, previous candles is a big deal. I'm not trying to get too deep into the trading aspect of it, but this is important. This is key. And there's a reason that you'll see so many people suggest this to watch. Okay. It's not because it's a waste of time. It's because it's very valuable. So we have BabyPips. We've got Mark Douglas videos, Trading in the Zone. And then we have the first community that I found was actually one of the first YouTube channels that I went to. It was the Trade Talk YouTube channel. And he had a video that was detailing the Wyckoff schematic at the top of a Bitcoin, this is not the video. So I just started watching him, and the gentleman's name is Heath, and he trades support and resistance. But when I first found his videos, I really didn't know the difference between support and resistance trading, supply and demand trading, moving averages, MACD, RSI. Like, I didn't know any of that stuff. So I was just watching somebody to get the basics of like moving around on a chart, like how to learn to use TradingView, like basic stuff. And he had videos on all that stuff. Oanda was my first broker that I used. I put $100 in there. We'll get into that probably in the next video about exactly how I got started with my live account and what the parameters were that I used. which pairs I traded, which sessions I traded for those first few months. But this video was important for me. This is why I opened my first account with Oanda, because he's had this video in here showing me how to. Oanda has really high spreads. I mean, I don't know that they're necessarily the best brokerage, but he had tips on how to do it. So candlesticks, trading view tutorial, support and resistance, three-way strong direction, support and resistance, Fibonacci. That was another thing I kind of got into when I first started, just looking at it, understanding risk to reward. So this is a great channel to go to. He has a little community, a Discord community set up, and I think it's like $5 a month. And I did that for all like 2 or 3 months when I first started. Like I said, I didn't really use his trading strategy, but it was just nice to have a community to go into and ask some different questions. Maybe not strategy related, but just about the how to trade, how to enter and exit, how to look for profit targets, things of that nature. So, and he was very helpful. So that was a good site. I would suggest checking out some of his videos. And then the next one that I got hooked onto was Vertex. I think that's Vertex. Yep. Now this is their YouTube page. They only have 60 videos. I would suggest going through and watching them all. This was the first course that I did. I really got a good vibe from Tans, the mentor, on a couple of the interviews that I watched him do. It's hard for me to put words to it, but I mean, I just got a good sense from him. Felt like he was a straight up guy. He was not a very good marketer. Like, he wasn't really good at all the flashy kind of, hey, buy my course. Like, he was very matter of fact. So I was like, man, this is the guy I want to take a course from. He's not hardly trying to sell it. He wasn't a very good salesman. So, and his YouTube videos are really good. And then an interview that I saw with him that was on a different YouTube channel was like really eye-opening to me. He gave a lot of credit to some other people who had taught him, which I really valued. So, so I signed up for this one and did it. And I'll say that making this my first course was luck, but it was the best thing that ever could have happened to me. Because I'm going to talk about 3 mentorships, paid communities: Vertex, Phantom, and Mentfx. Okay, these are the order that I kind of looked at them. The thing I will say with Vertex, I guess the pros to Vertex was that it was the shortest. Okay, number one, it was the shortest. Okay, now, and that makes a big difference, because I had just spent 30 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever the time when I found this mentorship, just spending hours and hours and hours watching video on YouTube. And I didn't realize that when I signed up for Vertex, but Tans, the mentor, in my opinion, he is of the courses I've took, of the people I've seen on YouTube, he is the best teacher that I have encountered. I'm not saying there's not a better one out there, just of the ones that I've had, because I've heard people say Photon was really good and he was a really good teacher, but I haven't taken that course. But Vertex, Tans, very good teacher. Okay. And it's not like there's 100 course videos to go through. I mean, he breaks it down to the essentials. He teaches market structure, candlestick structure, how to determine whether a wick break is a structure point or whether a candle closure is a structure point. He goes over how to identify supply and demand zones based on structure, how to refine supply and demand zones. He goes over how to use a smaller time frame structure for your entry criteria. They keep it. They don't use a ton of different time frames. They base their trades off of daily supply and demand zones and 4-hour supply and demand zones. and then they use the 1 minute for entry criteria. But I was able to get through that course in a couple of weeks, and then be able to go back and rewatch it and really digest it. I maybe even watched it 3 times, and then you get the Discord and you can ask questions. And their Discord, I hate saying this, but because they don't do a very good job of marketing themselves, their Discord is relatively small. There was 60 something people in the Discord when I was there. I mean, it may be more now, maybe less, probably more. It's been, almost a couple of years ago since I was there. But you could ask questions in the Discord and get answers, not only from Tans, who is the main mentor, but you also have James in there, who is also one of the mentors. He does more of the short-term scalping trades, whereas at least back then, Tans did more of the higher time frame swing trading. But it was just easy to be seen in there because it wasn't a ton of people. Again, it was the shortest. In my opinion, he was the best teacher. Really glad that I did that one first. Then I got into ICT. Just real quick, this is the Vertex YouTube. So they've got a lot of interesting stuff to watch. All right, next was ICT, the Inner Circle Trader. All right, Kylie, you could spend months. You could literally spend months in here looking at all of his videos. So most places I see recommend, and he's gone in and cleaned up a lot of this, Scout Sniper, Market Maker Primer. Those are 2 great ones. I love Scout Sniper. That was good. And then, yeah, he's cleaned up. So only playlists he has now are his old mentorships from 2017 and 16, and then his 22 and 23 stuff. And then he's got his Scout Sniper and Market Maker. But now if you go into his videos, he has not deleted his other videos. He just doesn't include them in playlists. So like you can go, and I don't know what kind of internet I have here, but you can go back several years and find like his OTE. My internet's not going to cooperate with me. His OTE series, which is his Fibonacci optimal trade entry videos. You can find all that. You can find his videos on like London Kill Zone, New York Kill Zone. You can find all of that still in his old videos, but he's clogged it up with all these 2022. Now I can't even get through to find the old stuff. Yeah, see, like a lot of this stuff you're not going to find in his playlist. Bitcoin review, you won't find any of that in his playlist. Market Maker series, he has that there. Forex scalping, if I had to restart as a trader, that's a good one to watch. So you can spend a lot of time. That's the problem with ICT though, is that it's so spread out, and his mentorships are good, but they don't cover the basics. So if you're a new trader watching this, it's just really hard for me to suggest ICT. I was very fortunate in that I had done the Vertex course before I really dug into his videos. So I understood market structure. I understood supply and demand zones. I understood how to read a chart, obviously as a beginner, but still, I had taken that course. And so when I watched his stuff, I wasn't starting brand new. And I see brand new people and people suggest ICT, and I think ICT is great. I mean, I've picked up a lot of stuff from him, but I mean, I would not suggest starting there. But still, you know, the depth of knowledge that he has is obviously valuable. So I do want to put that in there because I did spend a lot of time there. All right, next is Phantom. Phantom was, so I spent 2 months in Vertex. See, my goal originally was I couldn't decide between Vertex, Phantom, and Mint. Like I was trying to decide on those three. At the time, Phantom was 100, Mint was 100, and Vertex was 150. So I was like, well, I'll just go ahead and do the most expensive one first and get it out of the way. Because my goal, I knew they were all smart money. So I knew they were all related. So it wasn't as if I was trying to determine a strategy, but I was just didn't know which one I would like better. So I decided I was going to do a month in each one. A month in Vertex, a month in Phantom, a month in Mint, and then I could make my decision on which one I wanted to stick with. Well, I ended up doing 2 months in Vertex to begin with. And then the next one I did Phantom for a month. All right, and so Phantom, very similar. I will say this, Phantom has some pros and cons. All right, so compared to Vertex. This is a list of what they cover: supply and demand, market structure, liquidity. Vertex doesn't get into liquidity quite as much, but everything else they do. So they get, you know, supply and demand, market structure, refining your supply and demand zones, understanding order flow, risk management, how to enter your trades and manage your trades. So all these things are covered in the Vertex course. You get a little bit more in depth maybe in the Phantom course, but I just didn't think that the teachers were as good as explaining things. You know, don't underestimate the value of the person who's explaining these concepts to you, because they can be complicated or they can be simplified. But still, it was a good course. That what they would do, like Unit 1, well, okay, they would do a lesson, and then they would have some chart examples. Then they would, like in Unit 2, Lesson 1, and Lesson 1 chart examples. Unit 2, Lesson 2, and then chart examples. And so the material takes maybe twice as long to get through. All right, so there's a lot more. At least when I did it was. You know, this is 2023, so this was back at the end of 2021 that I'm talking. But it was a little bit longer. The material was. So as far as just the actual course itself, content, not much different. Time takes a little bit longer, and I just didn't get the explanations that I had gotten from Tans on some stuff. All right, so that's the course. Now the Discord on Phantom, very different than Vertex, very different. Whereas Vertex was small, 60, 70 people. The channels were strictly trading related. You know, they would post setups, post trade winners, post trade losers. They had a section for questions about each part of the content series where you could post your questions. You know, but it was all trading related. Phantom, I mean, I think Phantom had like 1,000 people in their Discord when I was in there, and they had they had some channels that were obviously related only to trading, but then they had entire group of channels that were unrelated to trading whatsoever, about gaming, about sports, about computing, you know, how people had their trading stations for people to post pictures of their trading setups at their, you know, at their house where they trade. You know, just sections for people, you know, different, like I said, different games. You know, a lot of people that trade also are into gaming, so they had sections on that, you know, and there would be conversations in those channels all day long that had nothing to do with trading. So it was just a very different community. They have multiple mentors, at least they did, in that group. So sometimes that wasn't always good because, you know, one person would be trading these time frames, these slightly different entry criteria than this next person who's trading a different pair, maybe a different time frame with slightly different entry criteria, or maybe they manage their trades a little differently, or maybe they use a little bit different risk, or one of them moves a stop loss to break even, one of them doesn't move a stop loss. I mean, they're all using smart money. They're all using the same basic framework to trade, all the mentors are, but I mean, obviously they're not exactly the same. Once you get into trading more, you'll understand, like, obviously they don't trade exactly the same. But when you get in the Discord and try to ask questions, sometimes that can get confusing when one person answers a question one way, and then you see them answer one of the other mentors answer someone else's question that was kind of similar to yours in a different way. And then you ask, like, well, why was your answer different than theirs? And they'll give you an explanation. Okay, so y'all may trade a little different. No, we all trade the same. Well, they don't all trade the same. I mean, they do, but they don't. And it was very confusing to me. So I spent 1 month in there, took the course, got some stuff out of it. Now, whereas Vertex used the daily and the 4-hour to get their supply and demand, the big difference with Phantom was that they used a 15-minute time frame a lot. So whereas with Vertex, it was you reach a 4-hour zone or 4-hour POI, you drop to the 1 minute looking for your entry rules. With Vertex, it was you look for the 4-hour, and then when you get into a 4-hour POI, you drop to the 15-minute. And then you wait for the 15-minute to give you a sign that price is going in the direction you want to go. And then you drop down to the 1 minute, when price is in that 15-minute range, and look for your 1 minute entry criteria. All right. And then some people in Phantom didn't use the 4-hour at all. They would use the 4-hour to get a bias. And then all they would do is set up 15-minute supply and demand zones and use the 1 minute, the 30-second, the 15-second. That's another thing I forgot to mention is that Vertex, and Phantom and Mint, they all will utilize, sub 1 minute time frames. And I'll talk about that in a later video. But so Phantom has a slightly different way of using multi-time frame analysis to get their chart set up, but it's not crazy different than Vertex, just a little different. But and then Phantom, they've only got 41 videos on their YouTube site on their free content. Some of it's been all right. I mean, I've watched most of it. Back when I started. Back when I took their course, they didn't have hardly any videos on YouTube. I mean, they had like 4 or 5. Like this was it. These down here. So this has all been added since they've. And also, when I started their course, it was $100 a month. They got up to $147 a month. So, but now that might not be a bad thing because they may have cut down on the number of people in their Discord. All right, and then the last community, the last course, the last mentor that I tried was Mentfx. Mint is the cheapest at $100 a month, but his course was the least organized and developed of the 3. He uses a lot of acronyms. He uses a lot of nicknames for things that makes it like really unnecessarily complicated. So instead of just using the same term that every other smart money trader uses, he'll use a different term to describe something that everyone else uses another term to describe. Okay, so like, I mean, I don't come up with an example because it'll be a dumb example. But, instead of trading ranges, let's see, that's not there. Anyway, so he just uses different words to describe the same thing. So instead of like a liquidity grab, which is what you hear all over the place, he's going to call it absorption. Well, I mean, the first time you hear absorption, you're like, what in the world is absorption? And so you either have to go find one of his, of the 90 webinars that he's done where he talks about it, because it's not in his original course. You have to go back and find what he means by absorption. And sometimes he explains it well, and sometimes he talks really fast. Sometimes he doesn't explain it real well. And until you finally realize, oh, that's a liquidity grab. Well, he doesn't call it, he just calls it absorption, because he just has this thing about liking to use different terms than other people use. Very, you know, his Discord was large, kind of like Phantom, but a little bit more trading centered than Phantom's was. But again, he had probably 10 to 15 hours of his course, right? That's kind of been the same, as far as I know, the same course that he's had for a few years. But then every week he does an hour and a half to 2 hour webinar. Okay, and so the first part of that webinar is him maybe answering questions from the community, going over a concept that may be new or maybe an old concept that he wants to reinforce. But a lot of times they're new concepts that aren't in his course. And so he'll cover that. And then for the last part of the webinar, he'll do his chart breakdowns for Euro USD. I don't know if he still does Euro USD and USD JPY or his two pairs. He may do more, but he does, you know, his weekly breakdown of the chart at the second half of the webinar. Well, but the problem is that he introduces new concepts in the webinars. So if you join the mentorship after webinar 97 and he's in one of the webinars that after you join and he mentions a concept and you get in the Discord and you ask him, hey, you know, what about XYZ concept? And he may say, well, it's in, you know, I went over it in webinar 33. Okay. Well, yeah, he probably did go over it in webinar 33, but he gave a much better explanation in webinar 37 or webinar 41, or to answer a question from the Discord in webinar 48. Like, you kind of find yourself in a situation where, like, you have to watch every webinar to really follow. And I don't mean that literally, because I don't mean every single one, but it kind of feels that way. Like, I got to watch all that content just to be able to follow where he is today. Now, obviously, Mint's YouTube is massive, and you know, I got a lot of value from his YouTube channel. And I will say this, you know, the strategy that Mint uses is the same basic strategy that Vertex and Phantom uses. He uses some slightly different time frames, but it's still supply and demand, smart money concepts. His double MB entry criteria is basically the same as Vertex. He just labels it a little bit differently. But a really good mentor. What I gained the most from Anton, the guy that does Mentfx, was that you have to be able to take losses without it hurting your feelings. And you have to reduce your risk to a point where you can take a loss without it hurting your feelings. You know, if you take a loss and you get aggravated, that's a problem. If you take a loss and you get upset, that's a problem. And that part of that is the Mark Douglas videos that you'll look at. Hopefully you already have looked at. But with Mint, I understood, you know, I watched him so many times. It was like, took a loss here, took a loss here, took a loss here, and there I had my win. And his win was maybe 8R. Well, he took 3 losses in a row, and then he had an 8R win. And he's just very good about, like, being very straightforward and telling you, like, if you're the kind of person that's going to get bothered by taking losses, then you're not going to be able to be a good trader. Like, you just have to get that into your head that if losses are going to bother you, then you're not going to be able to make it in this game, because you're going to lose no matter how good you are. And so it's like, I don't know if anybody that's listening may play baseball. Like, if every time you swing and miss, like, it gets to you emotionally, like, you're going to have a lot of trouble as a batter in baseball, because you got to be able to swing and miss and then get ready for the next pitch. And so, that's the same thing with trading. And you may have struck out 2 or 3 at bats in a row. Well, if you let that get in your mind, get in your head, then when you go up that for that 4th at bat, you're going to be pressing. You're going to be looking to swing at something. You're going to get out of your game, and that's going to make it even worse. All right, trading's the same way. Like, you might take 3 or 4. I mean, I've taken 8, 9 losses in a row. Now, I trade with a low win rate, high RR strategy, so I know that I'm going to take 8, 9 losses in a row sometimes. But you know, but when that perfect pitch comes right at you, hey, I'm looking for something that's high, a bit outside, fastball, and I've just struck out 3 at bats in a row. But you can't be scared to swing when you see your pitch just because you struck out 3 times in a row. So Mint was really good about teaching me that, hey, you've got to put your big boy pants on. You can't get your feelings hurt. You got to be able to take a loss. And so, these were all of the resources between the YouTube, list and this list right here. I'm sure I'm forgetting 1 or 2 places. I'm not forgetting anywhere over here. This is it. But there may be a few more YouTube places where I went. I did start watching some of my forex funds interviews, funded trader interviews, all those kind of things. I really enjoy watching those. I get a lot of value out of that, a lot of positivity out of that. But in my next video, the next part of this series, I'm going to be going over how I started my first live account, the parameters that I used, how I set myself up, knowing the prop firm rules. So how I applied those rules in a slight variation to my own trading, and then how I went about trading all the different pairs and the kind of risk that I used so that I could get hundreds of trades forward tested and back tested without losing really any money trading wise, because I was spending money over here on these things. I did not have money to lose trading, but I also wanted to have a live account. So that's what we're going to get into the next episode. If you have any questions, any comments, if you've gotten any value out of this video, if this little rundown of these mentorships has been helpful for you, if any of the mentions here the YouTube channels have been helpful for you, I'd really appreciate it if you would like the video. If you really didn't get anything out of it, then obviously I'm not going to ask you to like the video. But we will have another episode coming out here probably towards the end of the week to go over those first 3 months of my live trading and how that went as we work our way down the road to me eventually getting funded. Again, my whole purpose here is to try to help someone else who's brand new, whose goal is to get funded, and to try to find both the quickest and the least expensive way to do that. So thank you for taking the time to watch, and God bless.